Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Billion Dollar Banker podcast. I'm your host, Nicole Perrone, and today I am honored to be joined by someone whose energy, passion, and impact have truly redefined what it means to lead in the real estate industry. From the starring in the Netflix Selling the City to being a top agent at Douglas Elliman, Eleonora Srugo has built her success not just on closed deals, but on authenticity, grit, and vision.
That's sweet.
Eleonora, welcome to the show. I'm excited to dive into
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for
Happy to
coming.
be here.
It's been fun kind of getting to know you a little bit behind the scenes here. And I know our audience is excited to get to know you better. Everyone has just such great things to say about the show. I absolutely loved it. And I know the audience will love to learn more about you. So
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm glad you came. So I know your background is you're from Israel. And
Yes.
I don't know, what age did you move here?
I was 2.5 or 3. I don't know. My parents still think this is somehow a point of contention, whether it was 2.5 or 3. I'm like, I don't know how that matters, but I guess they'll fight about anything at this point. But I think it was like summer of 88. So like right before I turned 3.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And so, but you remember, you talked about on the show, you remember kind of growing up in like a smaller village area?
I remember, so we came to my parents were artsy types. I'm the complete opposite of them. They're like creatives, could not even do basic math. I was like a super just math and science girl. And they knew the West Village. I mean, that's where my dad was is a jazz musician. My mom went to Lee Strasberg, which is an acting school in the city. So we moved to Bleecker Street initially. And then in 1991, we moved to Soho. And Soho sounds nice and fancy to most people today. But if you know anything about New York in the 80s and 90s, Soho was not what it was. Yeah, there were no retailers there. It was still heavily an Italian neighborhood. There were like the remnants of the mob sort of still on, whether they were on Little Italy side or even on Thompson and Sullivan Street with St. Anthony's. And there were, also artists, because there were sort of empty warehouses and there were artist designations for the lofts. If anyone knows, there was Eitan Pates was a child who was abducted in the 80s that had sort of paralyzed downtown Manhattan. He was also a nice Jewish kid who went to like PS3, which is the same elementary school I went to. So, and he was abducted in Soho, and that case has never been solved. New York City history. So Ghost, a lot of people know the movie Ghost. Patrick Swayze lived in Soho, where he was murdered.
Prince Street.
Right. So like so it was a very different Soho than what people think of today. And we were there for 18 years. I think we moved out in 2009. So obviously I grew up with the entire like evolution of the neighborhood. So I single-handedly saw it go from, I don't even know how to describe it, because there's really, all of Manhattan is really nice today.
Right.
But sort of, more desolate, and
Not
then sort of gentrified, to like now suddenly like all the top retailers and being the most expensive neighborhood suddenly in the city.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
It's like if you could have had a crystal ball to have seen that coming.
It was crazy.
Are there any other neighborhoods that you think have that kind of potential that you can see forward?
Yeah, it's funny because like it happened to Soho. It definitely happened to the meatpacking district. We all sort of saw that on Sex and the City. If anyone grew up watching that, they were like, Samantha moves to the meatpacking, and it's sort of, you still see like the trucks coming in with the meat, and there were some interesting like bars, like drag bars and things like that you sort
like
of
Times
see.
Square back in the day was
Times
like
Square.
a mess.
I mean, like, look, I grew up. I remember when like Giuliani was like running, right? So like he changed. He was very much the law and order mayor who cleaned up the city. The city was not like what it is. New York in the 80s. Anyone who's young, I say this to people on my team all the time because they don't know, they're not from here, but New York in the 80s was a totally different place.
Yeah.
And so, do I see it happening today? I mean, it's still happening. It's happening with like areas like Hudson Yards and like the West 30s.
It's interesting because I was thinking about your background and like some of the core values that you must have grown up with, just being that was your story, coming from another country, moving to not like the hottest place in Manhattan, a new area. It must have been really different. What core values do you feel like stayed really constant for you from growing up and then through your real estate career in your life?
It's interesting. I think, look, the best part about growing up in New York, everyone likes to like shit on it, that like you're in the city, you don't have a backyard. I'm like, okay, cool. You had a backyard. Like, I don't think that makes
your backyard Central Park. Come on.
Yeah. Exactly.
All right.
But I never had like a learning curve with anything. Like you immediately know how to sort of network and adapt. I was in a neighborhood that was a lot of immigrants, a lot of artists. Like I went to a preschool with like, it was called New Friends. It was run by like a dominatrix from Ecuador. Like she was so cool.
You were like,
like different languages, different cultures. No one, we marched in like Pride before it was like a real parade. There's never like a sit down, like, let me tell you what Jews are or what gay people, like you just kind of know, just exists. You live in that world. And so
do you think that helped you to be able to work with?
Yeah, I think you kind of feel like a child of culture of the world. You don't feel specific to any one place. You have your own identity, but there's no, like, I went to Stuyvesant High School, which is a predominantly Asian high school. Since the late 60s, it was so Asian American. There was no way for me to grow up without like deep Chinese and Korean culture. Like it's just, I don't know, it's a part of you, and it allows you to connect with so many different people, and especially in residential real estate, that's not so analytical and sterile. It's a more personal experience.
Right.
I think that's like those are great tools.
Yeah. I mean, it's a thing that a lot of people don't get when they're watching the show, right? And they're seeing you in all these beautiful buildings all across Manhattan. There's so much that's changed and that you've seen.
Yeah.
And when I think about the show, I'm curious I want the audience to know, like, what are the core values that you've had that you took with you in real estate that were the biggest piece of like who Eleonora Srugo is?
It's the show. You are relinquishing a lot of control when you do something like that, because, you can try as hard as you want to be just who you are. But like there are certain things that they can do. We film a scene for 4 hours that ultimately gets cut down to 3 or 4 minutes. So you have no idea, right? And like I could be looking at you, but like the way that they had to cut it, it kind of looks like I was looking at somebody else.
Right.
It might not even be intentional on the editor's part. It's just like how timing works. So like you actually never know. And I make a lot of faces. I'm pretty expressive. No one knows. It could be because I just need to pee. It like might not be that I'm making a face at someone else.
Why is she looking at me like that?
Yeah. So like there's no, but there are things and then there are things that the audience picks up on that I haven't even seen. I think for me, as someone who was a consumer of reality television, the most important value was to be honest and authentic. I also thankfully like live a life where I really don't have any dirty laundry. There's like nothing on me. So I kind of was like, I could put anyone on this show and they can come. Like there's nothing that I won't be comfortable talking about myself or revealing. I think that's like a strength. If you aren't good with that, you probably shouldn't do a show. It's hurtful to hear people say things about you, but if you like said them first, then whatever.
Right. The self-deprecation.
Yeah, like the or just like owning your imperfections or shortcomings, I guess.
Do you feel like there's anything that like challenged your character or skill on the show that was difficult for you to deal with?
No, when I looked at myself, really my only regret was that I probably cursed more than I wanted to, but otherwise
that's the Italian neighborhood you grew up in.
Yes. And probably like a little bit of like just like the alcohol and trying to have fun with it and knowing that like people still want some entertainment. I also knew it wasn't like a documentary on like my professionalism.
Right.
It's still supposed to be entertainment and fun.
Well, you talk about that in the show. You're like, this isn't, or no, you said it on a podcast. You were like, this show is not about real estate. It's about people working in real estate and their stories, right?
Yeah.
It's not about
real estate is like the theme, right? It's
sort of the backdrop.
It's the backdrop. It's the theme. It also adds for like beautiful visuals.
Right.
But the idea is like real stories about, in this case, I think women in business. On the other shows, it's people in this business and a sort of a self-starting business. But no, I mean, like the things that were harder for me to watch on the show were the things that other people were saying and doing in their own, I think, insecurities and or fears about like the experience.
So a lot of what we saw, those challenges, those conflicts, that was real.
They were all completely real and genuine. I think that's why the show, people who watched it found it so authentic and it resonated, because they really captured accuracy in the relationships. Even, and the producers get a lot of credit for this, because then basically 4 hours or 5 hours of television they captured these real sentiments that I think people experience. I can't tell you how many people reach out to me and were like, I feel like I have a friend that's toxic. You know, I don't like to use these sort of platitudes, like words like toxic, but they were like, I've experienced a relationship with a woman like that too, that didn't feel so supportive.
Well, I think one of the things that's so interesting too is because this is the first time a women-led team with all women. There's a couple guys on the show, but it was on a Netflix series to show real estate and success. And so I thought that was so great for women. Women talk a lot about supporting other women and being there for them. But like in real life, it doesn't always play out that way. And you had a lot of these people on your team that to me were like envious of the success you had rather than trying to grow from it and help it move forward.
I think it's funny, like I don't ever want to just support someone because they're a woman, right? Like that's a weird concept for me. I want to support someone because it's the right thing to do, and their values and the way that they move and conduct themselves and integrity is something that I can get behind. But certainly there's absolutely no reason to gatekeep. Now that I found a certain level of success, I think that can be shared. I think it can be replicated. And I don't feel any sort of insecurity or twinge or ick or spiral about somebody else doing better than me at a certain point in time.
Right.
I've also seen it done. I've lived and experienced enough to know that I could bring someone else around me and introduce them to all the same people and give them all the same opportunities, and they won't hit the same level of success. Sort of like, I don't know, Kim Kardashian once like had a very good Instagram, and not that I like admire Kim Kardashian so much, but she had a caption that was like, I could give you my recipe, but the sauce won't taste the same.
And like
that I have found.
So you're not threatened by...
No, I have totally found that to be accurate and true in life.
Who were some of your mentors? Like, who did you look up to and say,
by the way, I'm gonna get a lot of shit from my friends on this who I could talk politics all day long, although I choose not to.
Okay.
But I grew up like loving Hillary Clinton.
Okay.
I thought I know. Here we go. Here we go, Jersey. Yeah. I know they're gonna come for me. Just regardless of my feelings today.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna, or like whether or not I agree with things that she said as of late.
Understood.
Whatever. As a woman growing up, she did not accept a role that was like traditionally assigned to her of being first lady and just doing weird social events and like redecorating the White House. She was probably more qualified than her husband to be president at the time.
Yeah.
She was a better student. She was she was better prepared, and she just didn't fit into any of the narratives that people wanted from her. She had a husband that was clearly a philanderer and womanizer, and she chose to stay with him, which was against probably the loud sort of feminist, like, you must leave him call to action. I think that her desires in life superseded a traditional marriage. She wanted power, she wanted power. She believed that she deserved it. There was when asked why she thought she should be president, she literally said, because I'd be good at it. She believed in herself.
Right.
And I think that she was actually knowledgeable and prepared. Was she personable or charismatic? No. Not so much. I don't know that those things should matter, but in my mind, there is something to the fact that she did earn it.
Right. And she believed in herself, right? Like you said.
Yeah.
What do you think gave you that intrinsic belief in yourself? I mean, 15 years in business, you own your own brokerage, so much success that you've had so far. Like, where does that intrinsic belief come from?
Look, I work for it. There are no shortcuts. This is the one thing, is like, you can't, sorry to the other people who are now trying to make it. Like, I grew up here. I walk the streets every day. I could like literally name every single block in downtown Manhattan, all the way down to the tip of the island.
The native New Yorker.
Yeah, I know. I know my stuff. I read about it. I read the trade magazines every day. If I'm curious about a building, I'll look it up. I'll walk by it. So you check out listings it is something that I care. I have knowledge, and I feel very confident talking about it. I feel very confident saying I don't know. There was a moment on the show where Abby asks me if the copper building, because it's made out of copper, will turn green, and I said I don't know. And that is a totally acceptable thing, right? Whereas like when I called Jade out for not knowing the bridges,
Williamsburg Bridge,
she lost her shit. Like,
Well,
it's
actually,
not
I was
that
curious
serious.
about
Yeah,
that,
I don't
'cause
think it's like that serious.
Well,
like,
it's not. Well, you said in the show,
Yeah.
you were like, I don't mind being correct. I don't mind
No.
making a mistake.
That's how
Like,
you
it's
learn.
okay, correct me, right?
That's how you learn. It's great.
Why do you think you have that perspective of like being able to take feedback and as a leader, like to be comfortable to give it? Because some leaders aren't comfortable saying, "Hey, you didn't do that right. Like next time, you want to look at it this way."
I'm an inherent student. I say this about my mother. Like I had to be a good student. Maybe I didn't have a choice, but sort of like she was like, I'm going to work really hard and I'm going to cover, 3 jobs and let you live in this beautiful loft in Soho and give you your freedoms. There were no rules or, curfews, but you're going to be a good student. That is your end of the bargain, is to like do well at school and not F up and not, give me issues. So I'm always a student and I do like to learn. And I think that like there's if you can like generally accept that people are rational, it's not a crazy assertion,
right?
Then you can always understand their motive or intent with things. And that is why we don't need to live in this world of like apologies. That's really been the biggest struggle for me on this team, was like, I need you to take accountability and say the word I'm sorry.
Self-awareness.
I'm like,
I did something wrong.
I don't know. Like, how about I just won't act like, how about you explain to me why you did that? And I'll explain why I responded like that or whatever.
Emotional intelligence.
And we then move on and try to do better next time.
Compromise.
And express ourselves, right?
Yep.
Instead of like, I need you to own this right now. Like, I don't actually need that.
Right.
I just need you to like move honestly and transparently, and that's it.
Yeah. Well, that's what you said in the beginning. Like being authentic, being a student is obviously what a big part of where your confidence comes from and what you do. And it was clear in the show that you were just not like somebody they placed on because of whatever reason, right? You were on the show because you're great at what you did. Your background, your education, you speak 3 languages, right?
Yeah, and also I think the background and education is like the good part. And then obviously I've evolved over time. The one thing like Hillary should have learned is Hillary always used to say like, I always wore like a boring pantsuit because I wanted people to like listen to what I was saying and not talk about what I look like or dress like. And I'm like, yeah, but people do want to.
Right.
That is how they relate to you. Not everyone can relate to like you studying for 10 hours. People can relate to like how you like your coffee or what TV shows you like. Like that is how people bond.
Or aspire to I want to look like that. I want to have that success. Totally. I want to be able to do that. So, speaking of success, how do you define?
That's why I have dots on my eyes today because I want nice,
fresh out the med spa,
tight eyelids.
Yeah. No, they're going to look great. I'm sure they look great now. But how would you define success today versus how you defined it when you first started?
Certainly, my ideas of how much money was enough have changed. I now realize there's no correct answer to that question.
Sky's the limit.
Yeah, sky's the limit.
Did you think that you'd ever get to this level in your career?
I didn't think like, wow, I thought I was cool when I had $20, like, and not a 20 was cool, like growing up. So I kind of did. I think, there was a part of me that knew, like I took out almost $200,000 in student loans when I went to college. So there was a part of me that had a belief that I was either going to make it big or fall flat on my face and that there was no in between. So I'm not like a small thinker, and that I would say almost to a detriment. This is like the lesson that I always learn. I'm kind of like large in how I spend, and I generally believe that things will come back to me. Like I always like justify like picking up the tab because I'm like, you know what? Like one of these people one day will like refer me a client or something. It'll come back.
Karma.
We'll remember that. And more and more in life, that's proven to be wrong, as I have now learned on this show that like all the Ubers and all the member clubs and all the like expensive meals and alcohol and clothes I've lent, really, they never like, oh, hey, let me like send Eleanor on a vacation or buy her something to thank her. There's none of that. I was lucky to get like it doesn't get reciprocated.
Is it hard to manage? I mean, you sold the biggest sale at Douglas Elliman last year, $75 million. I mean, they show the commissions all over the show.
Yeah.
Is it hard to manage money when you get to this level?
Yes. It is, because I actually think all agents really struggle with this. They work with people that are usually wealthier than them, that have a way bigger lifestyle, and they feel the need to sort of keep up. And because we're in a service industry, we're like going out with clients and we're picking up the tab, even though like our clients think we have like some sort of expense account, which we don't. We're not. This isn't a law firm. Like it's all commission.
It's my bank account.
Yeah. Or car service. And so I do think that there's a little bit of like a need to be in this world. And I've seen many agents struggle with it. There's a reason why there are all these like commission advance companies out there and agents with credit issues, or as we saw on the show, agents with cash flow issues who need to like, you know, borrow money or take out an advance. It's also not a consistent stream of income. And I think sometimes agents are even confused like about what's deductible and what's a write-off and what's not. And by the way, like financial literacy and education is hard in this country. Also, like as of late, since the pandemic, the amount of people who are wealthy has multiplied exponentially.
Right.
There's more wealth. There's more access to it. And people are doing fun things like trading or exploring that. So
there's so many ways to get it now.
Yeah,
like
there are ways to get it, and there are so many ways to lose it too, and to end up like in a bind.
What would be your biggest piece of advice to agents on when you get that really big sale, and the best way to manage and invest in yourself instead of?
Yeah, I when I first started, I would say, like, by the way, I do think shopping is important, actually.
Retail therapy.
I think retail therapy, and I think investing in yourself. If you feel good, then there's like a pep in your step. And I think that there is a motivation, like whether it's a little mini trip, not a long trip. I think long trips can sometimes take you too much out of the like,
too far away from
too far away. But I think if you have this, like, when I close this deal, I'll buy this. I think that's a good motivator, actually. And then if you feel good, like a nice suit or a new bag, like if that makes you feel like I admittedly was having like kind of a shitty day yesterday. I was like looking at Insta. I was like, people were kind of hurting my feelings. I felt down. I couldn't get a deal done. I was just like, why is everyone like giving me shit? And then I got like a text from the salesperson at Hermes, and if you know anything about this, if you get the text that you're invited to buy a bag, like, thank you.
Like, I'm here.
Thank you for letting me spend all my money. It actually like made me feel, I was like, you know what, I'm a fucking boss. Like everyone's trying to like make me feel bad because like I'm not like out drinking on a Friday, you know, whatever, and I'm sitting here in the office.
Good for you.
But like now I feel like fine, but I'm going to go buy a bag that you can't even buy. So like I felt that gave me, everyone needs their ego rub. By the way, it's like, this is why people go out and like to go to clubs that no one else can get into, and member clubs. And when there's a big crowd, I always used to say like, I hate going out, but I love the moment of like 200 people being outside a venue and me walking in.
Yeah.
Well, it's a little ego rub and then you go home.
Well, I think, it's also validation. It's validation that, because, you know, even with people might look and say, oh my gosh, like she got on the show. She's so lucky. By the way, like we're in New Jersey in the studio right now. I'm in New York City all the time. I know people that know you that are like, she locked in. I mean, this isn't a story about somebody that just got lucky. This is a story about someone that worked really hard. On the show, you said, obviously you built a team, you're running a team. On the show, you said something about how, like, you know, everything's personal. It's not just business, right? How do you, with all this pressure, high-end real estate deals, you're selling the dream to the top 1% in the wealthiest city in the world. How do you stay grounded and not let like what is personal sometimes impact you? Like whether it be like working out or taking care of yourself.
Yeah, I do. So working out is important to me. I feel like I'm not like a person if I don't do it in the morning. That is my time to myself. I appreciate the hour without my phone. I like my me time and alone time. That maybe to a fault. Obviously, I now have learned that I also enjoy like being around people and intimacy and socializing, but certainly like the one night a week where I'm home. And like all the things that just make me happy at my house. I love that like my couch is cream colored and that I have fresh florals and that I have a vanilla scented candle and all of my French skincare that smells good. Like there are nights where I just like that makes me happy. I'm in my Haston's row. Like I like cozy, warm, fun. And then like a good like Goodfellas on like that all makes me feel good.
Back to the Italian.
Yeah, back to the Italian. It's just like a great, I don't know. There's like that movie can never get old. Like it's a good New York story.
What music are you listening to when you work out?
My playlist is like all over the place. It's like a lot of old nostalgic shit,
like 90s rap or something.
Yeah, but even like older, like weird classic rock stuff. Okay. And like I mix it. And if it's a good song, it's in there.
I see you like when you post on your stories. There's a lot of Drake vibes.
A lot of Drake, a lot of throwback. I mean, Drake's like same age as me, single mom, obsessed with his city. There's a lot of like, I think a lot of people can like relate to that. And he has a good capacity for like describing a literal or physical scenario and somehow capturing an emotion in that. I don't know.
He does.
But so there's that. And then how else do you ground yourself? It's good to have the same friends and family. Yeah, like it's good to have a lot of people see, you know, the friends that I go out with or socialize with. That's a good look. But I still have my real friends who are childhood friends, high school friends, city kids. You know, I grew up like in downtown Soho. There are people who remember my loft and my mom. And in elementary, middle, and high school, most people called me Alo. Actually, like there are people that know me from before I was all of this.
Alo. I hear, and by the way, L too.
Yeah, L. But the best compliment I get is that when people watch the show, they're like, it's the same person. Like there's no one's like, that's not her.
I think like at least the feedback I hear anecdotally is like, you know, you like women love you on, like they love what you represent on the show. I think even though like maybe the ego stroke is nice sometimes, I think you do come off like as somebody that is not like humble to some extent too. Like you did this. It's like that hard work that got you there. When you reinvested in yourself. You talk about on the show how like I could have went and bought my dream home, right? But instead,
should have. That's my advice. No, I didn't say should have. But my advice is you should have. Don't do what I did.
But you invested in a brokerage instead.
Yeah, I invested in building. Look, when people say that this show was not luck or overnight, that is true. I earned this show, I think, and I sort of clawed my way to getting it.
Yeah,
there were other shows. There were so many other different like casting people, and there were more opportunities to do shows that were like social or fun, and I kind of felt like I had aged out of it. Was in a different point in my career. Certainly wasn't going to go on a show where I was like having roommates or you know, romance, really just because that's like even a weak spot for me. But I fought for it, and even it was even after I had met Adam and Skylar, who are the incredible executive producers from Done and Done, it took a long time to get. This wasn't like an instant like let's just do the show.
How long was the process?
I was about 3 years from the time that we met to the time that the show came out.
Wow.
Because we wanted to make sure that, you know, they're all based in LA, and we wanted to make sure that they weren't losing or sacrificing some of that what they do beautifully on Selling Sunset by relocating to New York and all new crews, and obviously Netflix had to get on board, and I have a team that exists outside of the people that are on the show, and which one of them may be on or not on, and how we were going to somehow set the stage that's very different from what they know. In LA, it's super easy. It's Brett and Jason who run a brokerage, and they have the set there, and they're free for all. Here, there's the component of Douglas Elliman being involved, and Douglas Elliman's office, and Elliman rents their office, so there's a landlord to the office too. Like there are so many other people. Yeah, so many logistics, and we really wanted Steve to be on the show. To me, he is my favorite addition of all the cast members because he is a broker that I work with often, that I really respect.
Is he like gracious. A mentor? Do you feel like to some extent, or
no? Because we never worked that closely. But like I would say he's a mentor in like the space of being a real estate broker on reality television. Like he had done that for many years. He had, I don't know, 6-7 seasons on his show. And so he sort of knew the ecosystem, knew the landscape, and gave me a lot of guidance as to like how we can do it in a fun way. And so like the scenes with him are great. He jabs at me a little. They never get too hard. I can sort of jab back. Like I have so much respect for him and his wife and what he's accomplished.
I remember the scene where you guys were at his place in Connecticut. And he was giving you some advice on the team, and you know, like now that you've achieved this level, like to kind of separate yourself a little bit if you can to some, like you do so much for the team.
I did. Yeah. And I should have taken his advice. I really should have taken his advice. The problem was for me, and maybe a good learning lesson, was that I wasn't just building a team independently, entirely based on merits and real estate and my systems. Right. I was building a team with an element of a television show in the background. So like, it wasn't fake, it wasn't for the show, it was very real to me, but I can't ignore the fact that it was there. And certainly in today's culture and climate, it's a motive, it's a factor that is important to some people,
right.
some more than others.
We were talking about before, like the audience, I'm sure would love to know how much of what was on the show was reality, like the drama, the conflict, like some of the things that were said when you would turn away. Like, was that all real?
For me, yeah, everything was real. Everything was real. In fact, some of it, there was more drama, I think, that could have actually been aired. I'm not perfect either. I had sort of moments where I said things. I think there was like one thing that I said that I really didn't like. It ended up not making it. But like, I also, and I always say this, we've all had meltdowns. We've all had like our, I was probably more aware that there were cameras on. It's sort of just like I'm aware that there are clients around. I actually tell this to all my friends and even prospective guys that I date. Like, if I'm with you and like I find out that you like had a child with someone else, but we are at a like very important work function, That's probably won't lose my shit because like there are people watching.
That's good.
And like,
I'm going to kill you when we get home.
Yeah, exactly. And like my livelihood, like our future could depend on like how I act right now. But later behind closed doors, like I will murder you.
Yeah.
Right.
That's it.
That's done. Okay. Like my crazy is more contained. I won't do it in that way. Obviously it's justifiable if someone has a child with someone else. But anyway, the advice is that like what Jade showed on the show, for example, in the finale, is not an unreal or unrelatable scene for women. Women have been there where they've like lost their shit and had enough. I just like probably wouldn't have done it with like clients around or cameras around or like a work event.
Right.
But it is something that is relatable. And so like, I don't think that's why she obviously owns that moment. I think what was more confusing to people was like, why that happened. No one really quite understood what the frustration was.
What went on there.
Yeah. What went on there.
Well, you just mentioned the dating analogy, like if somebody had a baby. So I have to ask you, like you said on the show, like if someone had told you that 50% of planes would crash and you would die if you went on 50% of flights, like would you ever get on a plane? And is that how you do you view dating in that way? And how do you keep the balance between what you do every day? You guys talk about this a lot on the show, like being on your phones all the time and getting calls after 8 p.m. And some of the girls talked about like people that were jealous about their phones constantly going off or the people they needed to connect with. How do you balance all of that? And do you really feel like, is that like a dating analogy for you?
I think it is. I also am a product of divorce. So I know what, and I actually applaud my parents for knowing that it was like better to set an example of them both being happy apart rather than me seeing them miserable or fighting together. I think that like I also have a job where I get to observe a lot of like couples and dynamics, and I see things that work and I see things that don't. More often than not, I see relationships that I feel lack in honesty or pleasure. I live my life with a certain sense of urgency about my time. I feel like forever, hopefully, knock on wood, will be decades and decades and decades, especially with all of the like NADs and exosomes that I do.
Oh yeah. But 5 years, we're going to be living forever.
Forever. But it could also be like, it could end tomorrow. And I don't understand why I see so many people who are like, after 8, like I have friends who are just like, they're always at, I'm like, you never want to be with your wife. He's like, after 8 years, like you kind of hate the person. I'm like,
wow. Who wants to live that way?
I don't want to live that way.
Yeah.
That is not what I want for myself.
You have high standards for yourself.
Yeah.
Professionally and personally.
Yeah. And I see, and then sometimes I see things that work. So like there are things that I observe that work. I see husbands and wives, relationships where they give each other a lot of space. They have separate interests. There's distance. There's respect. There's acceptance of who you are and evolution. I know that it's possible to work really well as a partnership as long as you're sort of aligned in terms of like what that means for that relationship.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think you got to find the right balance, and you probably need to be with someone that understands this side of the business and what you're doing every day.
I always say like I probably couldn't be with someone who like works for the man, or I would also need to be with someone who's sort of in a position where they are 24/7.
They're
work
ambitious.
For themselves,
they have
or just entrepreneurial, whether they own their own company or just an independent contractor of sorts, or have lots of projects going on. Yeah. I think that's something that would automatically sort of be.
Well, and you would probably be great for someone like that too, because you understand it, and that would help them. What do you think is the biggest misconception about luxury real estate that the public doesn't understand?
Well, the biggest misconception about luxury real estate probably in New York well, I don't know if it's a misconception, but the biggest feedback I get is that like they can't believe the pricing for like getting nothing. I don't think that people understand that people are not buying real estate in New York necessarily for like the exceptional real estate, although I think it's beautiful and has its own charm. They really just want to be in New York. I mean, there is a certain kind of person that like is really cut out for the city and like just, you know, has this desire for this limitless capacity. I always say it's the only city in the world where you will be at a party with like a top 5 richest person and like someone who's living with like 5 roommates in an outer borough, and they're both at the same place mingling. It's like, you know, there are other places where there's ranges of wealth, but never to that extreme as you can find in New York. And I think that's a cool feature, and that's why people suffer the inconveniences and pay the taxes and sort of deal with all the shit of being here, because they know that so many things are possible.
That's what it offers.
And I think it's certainly a business that is ladled with rejection, right? Like when I say that, how can it not be? It is very personal. You often interact with people. These homes represent very important things to them, whether they're financial or meaningful to their family. So it's hard not to like take that on, being a part of their lives. It's
and on the show so a lot of people will talk about like what you guys wear on the show and how you dress, and like they might just be looking at, I mean, real estate became sexy from these shows, I feel like, right?
I agree.
Like if people like wanted to become realtors. I always say like on my side of the business, on the financing side, like no, like they think of a banker, they're like, what do people see? They're not seeing what they see when they think of real estate. And so I think it's glorifying and making people excited about what's possible. It's making people move into the city, want to get involved.
I agree. I mean, I'm actually gearing up for like a debate coming up.
Oh yeah?
Yeah,
it's not at the Real Deal Forum.
Yeah, at the Real Deal Forum.
I'll be there.
Okay, so they originally told me it was just a panel on reality, but now they're marketing it as a debate on whether it's good. And I understand. I fully actually understand. Like there's one agent in the city who actually was on a reality show himself once, but now is very passionately against these shows because he thinks that there are a lot of things that are shown that are unreal. And I accept that. And I accept that there are a lot of characters on these shows that are not like us, that have worked really hard and are not as knowledgeable and experienced. And I watch the other shows, and I can even point to people on my show who like were not in real estate 3 years ago or whatever, or other, you know, some of the LA based shows, but that's also true to the industry. The industry is not full of like amazing experts. You know, I would say that's like 10% of the agents.
Well, I like the way too that you handled like the question about like, you know, do agents really dress like that? I love the way you handled it. I think it was on the Real Deal podcast. You were like, well, you know, selling Sunset really set the bar, right? So what were you going to do? Show up and, you know, whatever, like you had to keep the fashion going, keep that standard.
Why would I do this? Show is an aspirational show, and I'm like an advocate for my city. I love New York. I want the best feedback I get is people being like, I want to move to New York. So like, why would I not want the city to look beautiful? Why would I not want to look amazing in the city? I want you to know that this is possible. And by the way, I do dress like that when I go out. I'm not dressing like that to like run around with clients, but I do absolutely like to bring it when I go out. I think that's very exciting. It makes me feel good, and I think it's also a great way to like relate to people and connect.
How are you handling the criticism, or like do you ever have self-doubt that creeps in through this process? Because with all the new fame, I'll call it, right, with the show and all the new success that you've had, how are you like how do you manage that doubt and that criticism that you get?
I haven't gotten a lot.
Good.
I haven't gotten a lot of criticism. I feel pretty confident about the product that we put out and the show that we put out, and I feel pretty good about everything that I say. And if I mess up, I'm okay to own it and apologize for misspeaking. I agree with you. I think that these shows overall are a net positive for the industry.
100%.
I think that they make, you know, from what was once an industry that was considered to be one for people who failed at other jobs or who were uneducated, I think it's exciting that people want to be a part of it.
Yeah.
I think that there are a lot of questions about the future of the industry, but I would love, if anything, to try to sort of do my part in making it feel more professional, more corporate, creating more standards and guidelines, and reminding people of like ethical codes that are not laws.
Right.
So like they're violated often, but they're still sort of pillars of agency that I expect my agents to follow, whether they do or don't. It's a learning process. I'm not like so concerned with the criticism. I certainly get more criticism about like the physical appearance or how I dress. Like some people just don't like it. I actually couldn't. I don't give a shit. I actually
care less.
I think it's good. I've learned that like hate is somewhat necessary. You want, apathy. The opposite of love is not hate. It is apathy. So like when people care about you, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
If you care about me so much that you need to like block me, then like that's good for me. The only thing that hurts me, and this is more of a commentary on the world today, is like when people is a lot of the commentary about Israel. So that's probably the most negative that I get, and I commend Netflix in today's climate for like keeping that in there, because they certainly could have just included that I was like born overseas and not mention where. Certainly views have changed over the last 30 years. I also think the way people receive facts and education has changed.
So much information
on social media and not verified. Like I miss the days when you would have to just get your library card and go and just read and not be able to like look it up, and because you don't know what the sources are. And
are you a big reader?
I'm a big reader, and I think context for everything is important, and people need to like really understand use of certain words and try to be more linear and factual. And specifically for this issue, other than being linear and factual, there's also a lot of historical context of just about like how nations are formed that is important. And I don't think that it's a debate that's in any way helpful to have on the internet or on Instagram.
Agree.
So like it just...
So back off.
I don't know, back off. It's
no,
just like, it's not the, right. Yeah, it's like not the forum for that.
But you handle it as the key. Like you realize that it's a part of the, it's a part of the plan.
Right. But it's more just, it sucks that there really is a segment of viewers that are just like, she's a Zionist. She believes in killing babies, so we're not going to watch the show.
Right.
That's crazy to me.
Right.
I don't even know. Where do I even start with
like
that?
They're just labeling you something that like
it's like that was
no basis,
no even understanding, and it's so irrelevant to the show.
When you went to Boston U, because I'm thinking about you reading, what you majored in business, right? And you went to Harvard summer school.
I did. So that's why I wanted to go to Boston.
What did you want to be when you were in school?
I didn't really know. Honestly, I didn't know. I was good at math. I went to a school where really the focus was actually not about like what you want to be. The focus was on getting into a good college. And I actually think that's a big mistake that like most high school students make, is that like education has traditionally been geared into getting you into college. And that is a failed system. And it's a system just to make all of these colleges and universities richer. Yeah. Instead of really looking at kids today and thinking about like what you actually want to be and how you want to define yourself and what life do you want for yourself outside of being a TikToker or whatever.
Or a reality star.
Or a reality star. So there are so many different careers. I think having an understanding of different industries, career fairs is great when you're in high school. That's why I started a mentoring program for high school students. I did, when I was in high school, I did student government, and that's where I found my love. I was CFO. That's sort of where I started to realize that I was getting a thrill from like doing deals or saving money or like cleaning up the budget. Like,
well, I saw you write about like it was an article that was about like some project that you did that you won like #1 and was in college, on like the business, like starting a business or something.
Yeah, so when you go to an undergraduate business program, most of them start like first year. You have this sort of project where you just like analyze companies and sort of bet on which one would do better, like competing companies. And so unfortunately, neither of these companies are around today, but I had Brookstone and Sharper Image.
There you go.
So they were both, you remember those two businesses? Yeah. So that I really analyzed like just everything from their operations to their finances, like interviewing executives, marketing, all of that kind of stuff.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was a great experience.
I was like super impressed when I read all about your everything that you were doing in your background.
Yeah.
When you so people see the show, right? When you think about you in business, like what are some of the invisible habits that you rely on that people aren't seeing?
I don't know if it's so invisible, but I respond to, this is like the one thing I'll say is like, I respond to people and I try to respond always, especially to a client. I read everything. I see everything. I think that like, this is like the one test I give everyone that I hire. And actually Sarah, who runs my office and has been with me for years and years, she got this right, although she thinks she got it wrong, but she got it right.
You got it right, Sarah.
I'll give you a bunch of tasks and I'll ask you in what order you would do them. And the answer isn't the most important one first. It's the most important one second. The one that has to go first is the one that like just takes 2 seconds to do, so you can get it out of the way. So you have like less things to do. So that's sort of one of them, is like the easy like little things I get through first. My calendar, I like live and breathe my calendar. When I'm looking at my phone, I'm not like texting people. I'm not checking Instagram. I'm looking at the calendar and moving things and repositioning and moving things 15 minutes and seeing how realistic it is for something to happen on one day. And I prioritize a lot, mostly work first and clients first and foremost and showings. And then actually now at this point in my career, the gym also, I like no 2 weeks in advance. I put it in there. And
Are you in the gym early in the morning?
Yeah. Okay. The earlier the better, because then I can sort of get it out of the way. But I also, I mean, there was a time I would say like 6-7 years ago where I was really going early. Now I'm at a place where I also want to go to like who I want to go to and when. So like I'll make some accommodations for that.
Right.
But yeah, I try to put broad things in there. I think like having control over your time is probably the most important thing in the world. Being on top of it, there's a thrill to it. And also just like tracking your deals. If you don't have a tracking system for your deal flow, you're not motivated, you don't get excited, you don't have that. Like I look at my deal tracker in the morning and I'm like, you know what, I can't believe these people haven't countered my offer yet. Like what can I do? How can I be creative? Can I call them? I hate when there's like a backlog, but that's sort of it. You're always looking. And then the minute I meet someone new, like last night I was at dinner, a friend of mine asked me if he could join. I was wrapping up. He said, you know what, I'll just drive you home. I said, great. At 1:00 in the morning on the drive home, he's like, can I see that apartment tomorrow? It's like, great.
Sure.
So sure. We'll exactly. So like immediately I emailed that person, and then obviously I was not getting him into the apartment today, but he immediately went onto my tracker, onto my calendar as a reminder. Like I'm not going to like let that go till Monday. So
calendar prioritization of tasks. On the show, you talked about how you manage your team's calendar too. Like you want to know what they're doing. For people that are running teams today, like what advice would you have for setting up your team?
It's so hard. I feel really bad for I like doing sales more than I like managing people. I'm just going to be honest. It's not something that I love, especially I think in today's climate. I really grew up in this like if you're sleeping, others are working and they're taking your clients. Like there is a need, a rush. There's a love of like being independent. I think it's so important. I don't know that that's really recognized or rewarded in today's world. I meet so many women that like their claim to fame is like, look who I nabbed, when we go out. It's like they feel so good about like the guy that's next to them or on them. And that's like not the prize.
That's not where you get your...
It's not exciting. And they're like excited. Like they're like, here's my Birkin that was bought for me by like my rich boyfriend. I'm like, here's mine that I bought myself. Like
independence is important to you.
Independence is so important to me. And so I do think that a lot of the workforce is not there yet. And some people call me a micromanager, said these are HR disasters. Well, like, okay, then they don't have to work for me either.
Right.
This is my method and my system, and this is what works. I want
compromise. You're like,
I want my clients to feel like full VIP, above and beyond. Everything's taken care of. Someone from my team will always respond to them, check in on them, see how, their move was and what's the next step. And if we can help them with anything, and check in before the summer and see if they're looking for summer rentals or a referral or how it's going, if there have been any issues in the building. Like, I just wanted to feel very full service.
I'm sure that's why you've achieved so much success. Yeah. What's some of the best advice that you've gotten in your career?
The best advice I actually got probably recently from a client. I used to, because I take things personally, like sometimes when people screw me over, I'll like think about it a lot and I'll let it sort of debilitate me. I mean, there was early in my career, when I did my first $20 million deal, like there was some other agent at the company that wanted a claim to it, was fired, like thought was there when I got the phone call for the deal, tried to like take me to arbitration. And like the fact that like they were going after me for money was so debilitating. For like 8 months, I couldn't work out. I couldn't social. I was just like so consumed by like how this was happening to me.
Wow.
I would never let that now. Like I'm good. I'm really like, I reinforce that like any energy or time I give to like a losing battle, I'm just like losing more. I'm making it worse for myself. Yeah. I may as well, like my time, my thought process really should always be focused on growth. Right. At some point, like, my friend, Alex, Kenny's brother, always says like, you don't want to like, we're all in battle, but like if the soldier's gonna like, if he's dying and he's gonna like take you down with him, you gotta let him go.
Yeah.
So like that's the thing, is at some point you need to know when to like let things go, and sometimes you invest in a lot of things and they don't work out, and that's okay.
On the show, you talked about how betrayal never comes from an enemy. What has real estate taught you about human nature? There's
a lot of selfishness in human nature. I think that I think there's I think that a lot of people are self-motivated. I do think that there's a bit of a loss in terms of people really feeling empathy and thinking about consequence and how it affects other people. I think that money is exciting to people for some reason, and stature. Money is exciting to me too, but not
it's more about what comes from it, what you get
also
from
not
it.
At the expense of anyone else. I always, when I was younger and maybe was like more Hebrew focus, everyone would say like, oh, what an opportunist. And I would not understand that, because to me, an opportunity is a good thing. And someone who takes opportunity, like, why is that a bad thing?
Yeah.
So in a sense, I am, but I'm an opportunist as long as there's no consequence to anybody else.
Right. It's not at the expense of someone else.
It's not at the expense of anyone else's like hurt or pain. And truly, there have been many moments where like I've probably been in a position where I could have done something to someone, and ultimately felt that like it was not even for my own gain, was not worth hurting someone else.
Integrity.
And generally, the rule that I found is like they will self-implode and hurt themselves.
Yeah, it's true. It's ego. Like when you think about leadership, when you think about being in business, like you got to leave ego and like greed. It's got to be out of the, especially when you're working with teams and you're working with all these really, really affluent clients. I mean, it's a big deal. But when you think about your career, like is there anything that you're most proud of that maybe you've rarely got asked about?
Yeah. Look, I often get asked about the $75 million deal.
Yeah.
That was cool. It was exciting. It honestly was just a number. Like that actually just happened because I was good. I mean, honestly, this was a longtime client and there were a lot of people that were after this client. And I just I knew them better and I knew what they wanted. And I actually just started off as a rental. So wow. I hope people like understand that I really had the client's best interest, and that's why it all sort of worked out. But there were other moments. I guess some moments. There was one where like there were women that I grew up like very much admiring, and so it was always nice to when some of those moments came full circle. When I was younger, I would throw like loft parties, I would babysit, I would tutor, and one of the first like main purchases I made for myself was this like baby fat coat. I don't know, it was like baby fat was a thing.
That was a thing back then.
It was a thing, and it was like this girls like bomber. It was sort of like a la the North Face, but it had a fur hood and it had the big cat on the back, which everyone loved.
You're like, I made it.
I made it without my $350 like baby fat coat that I bought for myself. And I never let that coat go over the years. It's still in great condition. Like I bought it when I was 13 and I still had it. And then it was just funny that then years later, the founder of Baby Fat like randomly called me. And she was probably one of my first, I'd had some bigger deals, but like I was still a young woman, but she really like, I think historically has always sought to empower other women. She was young when she made it as a model and became a mother, and also had a successful fashion business and a television show, and then invested in a beverage line and a soccer team and has so many other ideas. She is like a mogul that it was nice to see her instead of like brushing me off and trying to like go for some sort of like older established male agent. She was like, let me work with this younger agent. So she gave me a chance, and that was a great moment for me, full circle, because like I still had the I still had that jacket.
Still got it.
20 years now, more than that.
But it's nice to hear about those things in the beginning of your career, because it wasn't always $75 million listings and beautiful earrings but it's important to celebrate. Like I always say to people, we have a coaching program. We talk about like celebrate the small wins, right? Like be okay with making mistakes. These are some of the things I'm hearing from you today. It's like believe in yourself. Like failure or being corrected for something is not that should be like constructive criticism should be something that you embrace. You should be happy to see other people win, right? You should be inspired by it.
I say this to my team all the time. I'm like, do you want me to think that you guys are losers, or like think that you're champions and that you're capable?
Yeah.
I think they're capable.
They should want to make you proud.
That's why I do. That's why I'm giving this to them. No, I'm not trying to hurt them. I've never done anything actual to hurt them. I'm only feeding them and giving them business. So when I am critiquing them, it is only to make them better. Like it's because I expect that from them.
Right. Which I think is a great quality for a leader.
Yeah.
I did a keynote speech on the science of luck, and we talk about how you can control your own luck in life, right? That there's a formula to luck, and you have to be prepared, you have to seek the opportunity, and then you have to take bold action. Do you believe in luck?
Yeah, I do. I'm someone that historically, like everything I've had, I've created for myself, or I've made it happen. But there's a part of it that sort of comes halfway there.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of patience when it comes to luck. You got to be patient, but it works out. Sometimes it like works out.
Yeah.
I've had some moments where I'm like, wow, someone was like looking out for me. That was like a clutch moment. But usually it's because I then like look back and I've put those pieces together. You've like sort of planted that tree.
Right.
You definitely though need to be, I would say prepared is sort of my thing, because you never know when that opportunity comes.
Right. Well, that's what you were talking, like that's what stood out to me before when you were talking about how like, where does that intrinsic belief in yourself comes? It seems like you're big on preparation. You want to study, you want to learn.
I don't think there are shortcuts for that either.
You can't. And then because you can't get the opportunity unless you do that preparation. It's not, the opportunity is not going to come to you without it, or it will rarely, right? It's like if you repeat that equation over and over again, be prepared, look for opportunity, and take bold action, then you'll get luckier. You'll create environments where luck will come towards you, and you'll kind of harvest it in your life.
Yeah. I mean, there was one of the women on the show, we both met a like billionaire, I guess, together about 6 years ago. And at one point, like 2 or 3 years ago, she's like, can you believe like all this stuff that has happened since you like met that guy? Like, and I was like, you met him too.
Yeah.
Like nothing happened for you.
You're like,
I'm sorry that I was able to, in that one moment, make an impression that really lasted, and then build enough of a connection to meet again and get a second meeting.
Right. Because
and
you
a second
may have been
opportunity.
More prepared.
I was more prepared for that moment than you were.
And so then that's when someone should be like, take away from that moment and say like, how could I have been more prepared?
Well, instead she's like, I don't chase people.
Or just blame
whatever. Or blame me. And blame me. I'm chasing someone. It's not chasing. It's just knowing my worth and knowing what I have to say and share, and knowing that like you have certain moments in life where you can really make an impression and tell your story.
Yeah.
I always tell people like, you'll always be asked in life, like, tell me about yourself. This is the one thing that everyone should know how to answer perfectly. In 2 minutes, please tell me what makes you interesting enough that I'd want to see you again.
How do you answer that question?
I mean, I have my own version of that, and it depends on who you're meeting and what you're talking to, and who you're talking to. But yeah, I mean, like there are ways to make, and truly the question needs to sort of end with like why you're here, right? Sort of leading you to that moment.
Your why.
Yeah, but it's true. Like people meet. I watch. I socialize with the mayor of New York often. I see him meet hundreds of people, and there are some that make such an impact that he's like, let me get your number, and those are people that were prepared for that moment.
Yeah, we talk about in the presentation that I did, we talk about how like you could be really prepared, you could have the opportunity, but then not take bold action, or not take any action, and then you're not harnessing anything in your life. Like you're not going to get, like, to your point, if you didn't follow up, or let's just call it chase, right? Yeah. You wouldn't have that opportunity with that person or that individual. First of all, I'm curious, like, if you ever gave a TED talk, what would it be on?
I have no idea. They haven't asked me. Yeah, I think real estate's like a good place to start for people in sales. I think sales is used to be sort of an embarrassing or humiliating business. I think it's a very humbling business, and I think it's really the only business where all you have is yourself. There's no like skilled trade. You don't like learn anything. You're not a doctor. You don't know how to sew. You're not doing anything other than just sort of like being you. I think real estate is like a great place to start the conversation about what it means to be in sales. But it could be anything.
Yeah, I think someone like yourself has so much to share, right? Like before all of the show and everything, there are things that you did in your life to lead up to that opportunity, and then you took action on it, which wasn't easy, I'm sure. Still not easy. No. But how would you say that the show has changed your career?
Look, the show has been really nice validation. I will say that there are, and I thank the producers for telling that story, because that was their job. You know, I would say there are two reasons why I wanted a show. One is a good friend of mine was like, Eleonora, like, it's okay for you to be single and 30, but it'll make it a lot better if you're he's like fame is the only outlier to being like single. He's like, Kim Kardashian can be single at 50 and J-Lo can have her first, but he's like, then there's like no stigma about it in New York. In New York, otherwise there's like a stigma about it, but if you're like on TV, then you're good.
You're like, how do you have time for a relationship when you're
right? So it's like, okay, let me get on TV, and then like maybe the stigma, then I can like date 28-year-olds without anyone saying anything about it.
Now you can, now you'll be like,
now it's like whatever, no one cares.
Did you think it was going to have the impact that it's had?
No. I thought it would have more of an impact. I thought it would just be another fun reality show, and sort of like a la the Bravo space, and fun and lighthearted, and people loving to sort of gossip and take sides, and some people will love me or love her. What I didn't expect was this like slew of not just mostly women, but like also anyone who has sort of felt disenfranchised, or a lot of children of immigrant parents who've reached out, who felt that this transcended a reality show and was more substantive, and they felt like they could relate, and it resonated on a deeper level. I think that there is, I think internally we were thinking like, okay, I'm here, I'm leading this show, like I was always like, why is it not like more tri-state area? They were like, well, Eleanor, like you're a fast talking New Yorker, you're like a, Jewish immigrant, like, and then I was like, okay, so we need Giselle, who's like Jersey and Cuban, and then Steve, who's like a nice Jewish boy from Connecticut. I love the like tri-state area thing, but they kept saying, no, like we really want everyone on the show. We need like more America, sort of this. And I think what I realized was like, no, people love these sort of stories. So many people can trace their stories to like New York and Ellis Island. I mean, 40% of the United States came through here. Yeah. And so many people who maybe they weren't born overseas, but their parents were. I think that is what I realized is so relatable. Like, the world is not this sort of, it's not one tone at all. And so I think many people could relate to it, even if they weren't from New York. There's something in their lives that was like, we're starting over, or trying new, or building something from scratch.
Something big. Yeah, I agree. I think there's so much that like in the show people can relate to and aspire towards. And, it's interesting because like the $1 Billion Banker podcast, this whole thing was about kind of believing in yourself, right? When I was in Manhattan with another mortgage company at the time, we did $2.1 billion in business in 1 year. That was 2021. There's like an anomaly. Crazy. Yeah, but it's insane. So
21 was a good year.
21 was amazing.
There's a lot of build up, but like also a lot of people failed out.
Yeah, a lot of our industry's gone through a big cycle. A lot of people can't make it, but like to me, this was about like believing in yourself, what you can achieve. And now I think when I'm thinking about you, I'm sure you're just constantly going to set that bar higher and higher for yourself. Is there anything else like on the horizon for you that you're thinking about, like when it comes to, not just real estate, maybe something more?
Yes, there are things that I'm thinking about. I also just want to do things that I love. A big part of why I did this show was also to like have fun finally. Yeah. It wasn't sure, I thought about it as a platform to build a bigger business and a brand and to expand. And certainly if I meet the right agents in other markets, I'm looking at those markets and agents who want to work with me who don't want to be on the show, who just like really want to focus on real estate.
Yeah.
But I also did this to have fun. I did this so that like now that I have proven myself professionally, I can like let my hair down a little bit and it's okay to like go and party and take a 2-week vacation and celebrate with my clients and like get invited to fun parties and award show, and fly to LA and film scenes for Sunset or whatever. And then like another weird, I know it's like quirky, but I grew up like watching demonstrative selling. I'm like obsessed with QVC. I still watch David in the Kitchen with David. Like I love that. So if I could ever
shout out to David.
Yeah, cameo on like selling kitchen appliances or anything or any product that I love. Like I think that's so it's like the coolest experience, and just like getting on the road and meeting people and connecting with them.
Well, good for you fun. Because we talked about a lot on the show how like in the beginning you were like a little bit more reserved, a little bit more like buttoned up. Yes. What like and we're wrapping up soon here, but like what made you like want to like unbutton, come out of your shell, like and get out there and have fun?
There were a few things. It sort of all hit me at the same time. When I was like 31 and I realized that I just spent my entire 20s not socializing and not drink. It wasn't like I was like, I'm going to not drink or have sex in my 20s. That was not the intention. But suddenly I woke up at 31 and was like, holy shit, that is what happened.
Wow.
So I was like, I need to like, so it's like, okay, I need a life.
30s are better than 20s anyway.
I hope. I don't know. I wouldn't know because I never got to experience them. But, and then I had a few clients also who like kind of pushed me in that direction who were like, Eleonora, like, you don't ever want to hang out. You know, you just want to like do your job and like talk about real estate. And like, it was almost like, it was like painful for me to be like, how are you? And do like the small talk.
Yeah.
So like, I realized that my clients also needed to know me and have that connection. So it actually fed itself. And then I realized, okay, like you don't need to separate. You actually should be just this holistic person that your clients can relate to.
Put it together.
There's like an agent that I'm really good friends with who like, it's so funny when he meets people for the first time, he's like, I have some like I go to therapy and like I'm not like I might be gay, I might not be, I'm not sure. Like and I'm like, why are you telling people all this stuff?
Trying to figure it out.
Yeah, trying to figure it out. But like, and he tells people,
call
like,
me, I could walk you through
it. He like tells people like right away. But like that vulnerability actually makes people connect with him and feel like they can trust him, and that makes him a good agent. And so I realized that like being vulnerable with clients is actually good for business.
It's big. Yeah.
That was part of it. And then another part of it was that I had this like thing that happened to me where I was written about in the press as being sort of a mystery woman for a bachelor reality show. That was my first exposure to like complete trash influencer, trash scum of people who all they want to do is be famous with having no actual skill.
You know who you are.
You know who you are. You're complete and utter garbage or everything that's wrong with society.
That's horrible.
And so once I experienced that and I sort of got through that, because that was like a year where I like went into hiding. I was like, I'm going to fucking live my life. Like I'm going to get the body that I want. I'm going to like go out with who I want. And I was emboldened. I actually had a great friend who at the time, a friend from Jersey who was like, let everyone fucking hate you, like get out there and, just be unabashedly who you are, call people out, but also, be like, look out for people, for sort of a little bit of a fighter.
Right.
And that gave me sort of, that was a good friend to have to just sort of be like, bring it on.
To remind you of that. Well, and hopefully the audience gets that reminder here. Like, honestly, that, that's the stuff that needs to fuel you in your life is the people that may not be believing in you, saying whatever they want to say about you. You can't let that define who you are.
Totally.
And while it is personal, like you can't let it take you down. You got to let it fuel your growth. And
heavy is the head that wears the crown.
Yeah.
So
there you go.
Yeah.
That's the truth.
Yeah.
I'm like so incredibly impressed by you, as I'm sure the rest of the audience in the world is that's watching the show. This
has been great.
You're true professional, amazing at what you do. And I think a lot of people aspire to want to achieve the things that you've achieved. I think you gave us some great insight.
Great. Reach out. I'm always here.
Yeah. Real estate needs, obviously. Right.
And anything else. Yeah.
For the top 1%, they listen to podcasts. podcast, right?
Yeah,
I think
so. I think everyone does now.
I think so.
Yeah.
1 billion,
Cool.
well, 1 billion listeners a day, they say on podcasts. So
Crazy.
yeah, it's wild. But thank you for coming.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you
Love
guys
being
for
here.
joining us today. The $1 Billion Banker podcast with Eleonora Srugo. All of her contact details will be in the description here, and we'll see you again soon.
Best. Thanks.